A new report says that Social Security will be depleted sooner than we think. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. 1-877-913-5357 is the number to call, and I would love to hear from you today, whatever is on your mind. You can also go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Send a question to the Ask Bob section, and I will get that taken care of. That is all at prudentmoney.com. 1-877-913-5357. 5357. Well, I appreciate your patience. We had a few technical difficulties. And, you know, if you're going to have technical difficulties, you might as well have them on a Monday. All kind of works together. Let's talk a little bit about some observations. We got word yesterday that Saudi Arabia and other countries announced production cuts as far as oil goes. And this really comes down to supply and demand issue, just like inflation. And so the supply problem is going to become the issue where we won't have as much supply, and the demand is starting to creep back up. So you start to have inflation again in things like gasoline, which we have not had. And I think one of the reasons, besides the fact that it's a very broken system, I think, how they come about measuring inflation, because there's just, we say this all the time, but I really believe it's true. When you look at inflation, where they say it's at 6 to 7%, and you go grocery shopping and everything is 20, 25, 30% higher, doesn't add up. And it's not like the rest of the things that cost money in your life aren't high as well. So what has happened, though, is that gasoline has really been a pretty mild as far as the cost of gasoline, and so it really hasn't had that much pressure on inflation. Now I think we're going to see that change, and we're going to start to see inflation starting to creep back up, and could be the next Wall Street worry. Because Wall Street's acting like, we got banks are taken care of, there's no problems, no recession, we're in good shape. But I got a question for you, and I found this story. I mean, if this is true, this doesn't make sense. As far as what Wall Street thinks about what's going on in the real economy. Now, you would think that McDonald's would thrive in this environment where, it's kind of there's cheap food to begin with. Kids love it. Parents, it's an easy way to get dinner taken care of, get lunch taken care of. And McDonald's just is, I don't want to say is recession-proof by any stretch, but to a degree can survive these types of situations in the economy probably better than most fast food places. Saw an interesting story come out. It says McDonald's is closing its U.S. corporate offices as it lays off hundreds of workers. The company announced in January it would be cutting jobs as part of a broader corporate restructuring. McDonald's employs roughly 45,000 people in the U.S. across its corporate offices and company-owned restaurants. So you look at all this and you think McDonald's potentially is having a problem. I know that's jumping to conclusions, but when it closes its corporate offices, trying to figure out who and how many people to lay off, how to restructure the company, there's something going on there this shouldn't necessarily be happening in an economy that's well, I think it's just weak. I don't think it's living up to its billing as a strong economy by any stretch. Sorry to disagree with President Biden, but just don't think that's the case. So interesting. We'll see what happens with McDonald's if they come out and they announce. But once again, things were so great, you wouldn't see McDonald's, I don't think, with these reports. 1-877-913-5357. I do have a line open. Would love to hear from you today, whatever is on your mind. Well, a new report says that the Social Security Trust Fund will run out of money 10 years sooner than originally thought. Now, you got to know that the story regarding, or the announcement regarding Social Security running out of money is a moving target. There's been estimates for 2034, but you probably more of the one that's a little bit more frequent. 2036, I've actually heard 2032 before. This is the first one, 2033. Now, for most people who have a general knowledge but not a specific knowledge of how these things work, and for most people who are on Social Security, I would love to know what the percentage is, but I got to think it's in the 90 percentile of people could not take a decrease in Social Security. But you got to know what this means, and I think once you understand what it means, I've gone through this a couple of times, but I think it's worth going through it now, especially when you have a new report and it's in the news that this may be a problem sooner than originally thought. So what does that mean? And incidentally, you can go on PrudentMoney.com if you really want to study some of this and read the article that I put out today on Social Security. Look at it from the standpoint of what provides money for Social Security. There's two different resources that pay for Social Security. First, there is the trust fund. And this is a very broad, general explanation of how this works. So please keep that in mind. It gets a little bit more technical, but this, I think, gets the meaning across as to what does all this mean when we talk about Social Security Trust Fund being depleted, running out of money. So there's two resources that fund Social Security. There's the trust fund, and then there is payroll taxes. So that some go to Social Security, you pay, your employer pays, and let's just say that all that money goes into a bucket. Bucket one. Bucket two is the Social Security Trust Fund. And the Social Security payroll taxes, they come in to bucket number one, and they need some help, need some money from the trust fund in order to go and pay out what needs to be paid out to people who are taking benefits. If you took the trust fund away and it was just a situation where you were taking money out of bucket number one, which is payroll taxes, it would fund roughly, this report says 27%. I've heard 30%. I've heard 80%. Remember, there's a lot of estimates. Once again, moving number target. So only 73%, 70, let's just go back to the 70% of the benefits you were getting, you would be getting if you took away bucket number two, which is the Social Security Trust Fund. Because what the Social Security Trust Fund, the money that's in that account, goes to supplement the money from payroll taxes to make up the 100% of the benefit. So what they're saying is bucket number 2, the Social Security Trust Fund is going to run out of money. It didn't say that Social Security in general is going to be depleted and run out of money. But that's what I think people hear, is that, oh no, it's all going to be gone. That's not quite the truth. 30% of it or so will be gone, and payroll deductions and payroll taxes will fund the other 70%. So that's the real story there. Now let's talk a little bit about how you fix this. Have we been there before? And believe it or not, and I didn't even know this until doing a little bit of research, that the government was close to depleting the Social Security Trust Fund back in 1982. And they took some steps, and obviously the steps they took made it last for a pretty long time. And the way that I look at it as the politicians are not going to permanently fix this because they just can't afford to permanently fix it, but they do it in batches. So the first batch would last 20, 30 years, the next batch would last 40, 50 years, whatever, but you get the idea. This is, of course, my opinion. So they'll fix a certain amount of time period where it'll shore up the system and put a patch on it, and it will last. More to this on the other side. 1-877-913-5357. This is Bob Brooks. Stick around and I'll be right back.
At the heart of the Christian faith lies the belief that Jesus Christ did not just die for our sins. He was buried and rose again on the third day according to the Scriptures. Do you believe this? Hello, I'm John Monroe, inviting you to join me Tuesday on The Verdict as we ask the question, did Jesus really rise from the dead? Tuesday on The Verdict.
The Verdict, weekday mornings at 10:30, here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
Many Christians picture themselves as independent, capable people. But in the Bible, Christ followers are often compared to sheep, and that's not exactly a compliment. Sheep are stubborn, rebellious, and prone to wander off. So what is God trying to tell us? Well, Tuesday on Focal Point, Pastor Mike Fabarez reminds us why we should follow the Good Shepherd. That's Tuesday on Focal Point.
Focal Point, weekday mornings at 8:30, here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. 1-877-913-5357. So the first that I know of, attempt to put a patch, not fix, not permanently fix, temporarily fix, lasted a long time. Social Security fixed it, put the patch on it, and now it's looks like that trust fund. And of course, you probably have heard, how did the trust fund get so depleted? Apparently, and I don't know this for a fact, I've just always heard that the politicians had other plans for an account that had lots of money in it, and they spent some of it. Not hard to believe, is it? So and this is once again my opinion, from a lot of research, I believe that given the next presidential election, this will become a big deal. They'll start the process of fixing it. Now, the thing is, you got to be able to see this, is that no president is going to get up and say, hey, you know what? Really, to fix this, we're going to have to raise everybody's taxes. So that is true, and that would put a big patch on it for a very long time. But that's not very very acceptable from a political standpoint. So that probably is not going to happen, but they'll figure out a way to raise taxes specifically for Social Security, or they'll, raise taxes. In fact, there's quite a few different ways they could shore up Social Security. They could take the ceiling off of and make the payroll taxes go much further, and for people who are making more income, higher tax brackets pay more. That's always a potential. They could raise the age from 67 or 66, which is about where we are today, between 66 and 67. They could raise the age to 70, or they could start the age at 64, 65. Like I said, they could raise payroll taxes. They could tax 100% of it. I mean, there's a lot of different things that they could do. I can't imagine that they wouldn't tax 100% of it. So the way that I look at it is, if you are mid-40s and above, you're probably going to be okay and not going to have a problem with Social Security. If you're younger than that, and I think that people in their 20s and 30s and some in their 40s are already accepted the fact that Social Security probably wouldn't even be around for them. I know many people in their late 50s who are expecting Social Security to go away. So when I do planning for clients, I typically use the numbers. I mean, depending on their age and depending on their feelings about it as well. Sometimes, the thing about the Social Security numbers, the benefit numbers, I was telling you the other day that there's a husband and wife I was working with, and they were both at $3,900 apiece. And that's pretty significant money when you really think about it. It's a lot of money for Social Security benefits. So there's a lot of people that, regardless of their age, they want to be conservative, and if they get more than their conservative estimate, then that's great. But just know this: there's not a politician in the world that's going to be president of this country that's going to sit back and let Social Security blow up. Not on their watch. And there's I think that there's most politicians would love to take the credit for fixing it, as if it's going to be fixed permanently, which you and I know won't happen. So there you have it. Don't get too concerned when you read these reports. I thought it would make sense to talk a little bit about it, about what it means, because that kind of shifts the interpretation of that to a little bit different level. Hey, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show, 1-877-913-5357. So what are some of the things that you should consider when determining what age to take Social Security? Well, let me say this, and sometimes I don't know if this is kind of an excuse to take it early, but I know many people who decided to take it at 62 because they wanted to take it while they still could get it. I personally don't agree with that as a reason, because I personally think it'll be around. But that's one reason that they don't take it. The other reason is they know that at some age they're going to beat the system. I don't really like that idea either. Just know this: there's a couple of reasons that you definitely want to consider when determining the age. The first one is the benefit that you and your spouse are getting, the husband and the wife. Whoever has the highest benefit for Social Security, say one of them has $3,500 and one of them has $3,000. coming in each month for Social Security. The $3,500 benefit obviously is the highest, and if something happened to that individual, that spouse who has had the $3,500, then the surviving spouse would no longer get their Social Security benefit. They would get their spouses who just passed away, they would get their benefit. So they'd get $35,000. So they went from $7,500, one spouse dies, the surviving spouse gets $3,500. And it's important that you know that, and that you know that it works that way, because that's a pretty big deficit. Now, I'll say this. I think that's a horrible death benefit. I think they should do more. They should at least go 1.5% of the highest number or something like that. Let's face it, all of it's going to be borrowed money anyway. But you talk about a problem with surviving spouses as we come up in the next 5, 10 to 15, 20, the number of people who will be in that situation, and we don't have a good system set up for death benefits for Social Security. The other big reason that you want to consider waiting is because every age you wait, every number, so as you go 62, 63, 64, between those ages, the benefit goes up by 8%. Get an 8% gain to the next level. That's pretty significant. And if you look at the numbers, especially if you look at the numbers age 62 to age 70, it's very significant. So what I always advise, and of course this also there depends when you have a husband and wife both taking benefits. There is some, it just depends on the situation. There's some benefit to waiting to your full retirement age, which right now I think is 66 in 4 or 5 months, something like that. But for most people, I say wait as long as you can and put together a plan. Because this is the thing about having a plan, is that plan, by running different scenarios, will tell you what the right age is. And you know what? It might be that 64 is the right age. That if you take your benefit at that number, at that age, that it all works out. And they say wait till 67. But this is one of the things that I talk a lot about, and I want to keep mentioning, because the vast majority of America does not have a retirement plan put together, and it is so very, very simple. So keep that in mind. Saw another. I actually got this as an email from a listener who was concerned about, once again, Social Security. It says, I read an article about Social Security, and it said that the trust fund could be used if the politicians do not get a solution and prevent the U.S. from hitting the debt limit. What do you think about that? Well, as it's believable, right? Well, it's true. The alternative, there's a little known provision back in 1996 that could be interpreted to allow the Social Security Trust Fund to be used not only to pay Social Security monthly checks, but also circumvent the debt limit and pay all the government's otherwise overdue bills. To my knowledge, the times that they have had to shut down the government, they have not dipped into the Social Security Trust Fund. I can't imagine any politician doing that. There's other places they can print money. They can go to the Treasury. They can do a lot of things. But that would not be good optics at all. Probably wouldn't worry about that. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.